No,
It doesn't matter.
One little light shimmer in.
Let's go.
Are you live?
Yep.
Love it.
Just live streaming. Someone's drilling. Yeah, you can do that as well. I'm just putting it on Telegram. Okay, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with you.
the least casual person.
I know. I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm just posting now the live stream. There we go.
Yeah, microphone.
There we go.
Yeah, everyone's good. Oh.
All right, let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, the talk is now starting.
Come on, guys, we don't buy. Come on. Daniel, I buy.
Not coming here, then we might buy.
How does the
I think 600 actually. 500 for the NFT and then Jade.
What? Give away.
Giveaway, yeah.
There's £500 being given away. Nobody wants it.
I don't know.
Oh, that, you say $500. Come on, come on, sit down. Come on. $500. Let's go.
Pay the siren investment.
I will have to deal with that side.
XP.
Yes. Yo, Dan, can you get Mems and Oscar as well? just to give a nice little intro speech. But I'm not the moderator. You can check into the celebrity.
Matt was supposed to start this whole event off.
Cool. Well, my name is Matt, ladies and gentlemen. For the time being, nice to meet you. Should we just get started?
We should get started, yes. Welcome. We're here tonight sponsored by Jade City, which is the reason why we think is neon green. We have neon green shorts and a lot of funny giveaways for you and extra value. And obviously this is a FRIDAO, so there's an education element. And we wanted to talk about asset-backed NFTs or real-world NFTs and their relation to investment, to Web3, and to social life in general. So, and I have with me Simplicity Consultancy, which we know are the best for tokenomics, our in-house experts. I have Blockchain Sensei with me, and I have Jade City, and me, who will be asking the questions and hopefully be educated together with you about real-world assets. So to start it off, what are your thoughts on tokenization of real-world assets and illiquid things?
So my thoughts on tokenization of illiquid assets is most definitely it is the next big trend, whether anybody likes it or not. Simply because the two of the biggest whales and the biggest whale in the game, BlackRock, Larry Fink, was quoted at the Deal World Conference as saying that his main focus on blockchain is to provide liquidity to illiquid assets, and that they've already started working on ways to use the blockchain to bring tokenization and quicker settlement to illiquid assets, mainly the stock market and bonds, which inevitably they'll then move on to precious metals as well. And the same thing was echoed by the CEO, David Solomon, I think his name is, of Goldman Sachs. He said literally the exact same thing, that the next 5 years, the next biggest trend is going to be the bringing illiquid assets liquid, just simply because it just makes more sense because you get faster settlement time. So yeah.
My opinion, Jim?
I want everybody to think.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it's the fact is, you know, blockchain technology, security tokens, NFTs, it's just superior technology to what we use nowadays. I mean, essentially, you know, if owning shares in a company, you know, we do it through equities, and it's antiquated technology. It's never changed, and this allows it to be way more efficient, and it allows more people in the world to have access to things. And if you have any asset that you want to let people invest in it, the more people you let invest in it, the more chances are that asset will perform well, because you've just got a bigger market, and that's what blockchain technology is going to allow for physical assets.
Yeah, exactly what they said, and also just to echo Michael's point as well, in the Coinbase market overview for 2023, and the Mazari market overview for 2023, and I'm sure pretty much everyone else mentions that tokenizing assets is probably going to be the next big thing, pioneered by people like BlackRock and everyone else in the traditional market scene.
On side of the blockchain sensei, because you do a lot of investing as well. How do you think the fractionalization and tokenization of literally everything that we can now do changes the face of investing?
I think most importantly is it democratizes wealth, which is the most important thing. I think number one, the biggest problem with wealth is there's always been gatekeepers and controllers that meant that if you wanted, let's just take for example a house. To be able to get a house in London, 90% of people in London can't get a house in London because the barriers to entry and gatekeepers are too high. If you now tokenize all the properties in London, it means everybody can now get involved by literally just flicking something on their phone, and then that means that the house valuations actually should skyrocket. So yeah, I think everybody should. I don't know. You have to talk to the tokenomics expert on if that'll make the price go up. But yeah, it just means it's better for everyone, and I think that's the bit that I'm the most excited about, is just the ordinary everyday person being able to get access to be able to invest in things that they just like most people, Gen Z, are kind of giving up now on the idea of owning a house ever, especially if they live in London. So I think this just now kind of makes people go, oh, actually, there is a little bit of hope. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's like geographically as well, because when we're we live in this country, right? So we want to invest in something in this country, we'll probably be able to do that. So there is one barrier. A lot of portfolios for things you invest in, you can't invest in it unless you've got a minimum of 100 grand or something. But if you start to fractionalize something, I don't know, let's say it's a property portfolio in Westminster that's worth $1 billion, and you fractionalize that, into 1 billion NFTs, well, then in theory, if you've got £1, you can own a bit of that portfolio, and that's never been possible before because the gateway, the barriers to entry is big. And then if you live in another country, so let's say you live in, a country I used to work in, Tajikistan. I mean, if you send money from your bank account in Tajikistan to somebody's bank account in London, the person in London would have their bank account shut down. That's about the sort of situation you're in, So the concept that somebody like that might actually be able to not only send their money, but then go through KYC and then buy a bit of a property portfolio, in Westminster, it's just never going to happen, right? But what they could do, if it was on the blockchain, if they can install the blockchain, they can buy whatever they want. So it opens up to the whole world as well. So the people who live in countries where it's very hard to store your wealth, suddenly, digitally, on their phone, they can store wealth in physical assets in countries they've never even been to.
Just to touch on that, I'd like to add that the more of the regulatory side of things, which is when you're tokenizing assets, like for example, property, or in this case, I'm not exactly sure about JADE, because JADE is more of a commodity. Not commodity, but like it's
a kind of commodity. It's like a gemstone.
Yeah, exactly. So it's sort of like on the verge of a very fine line of regulatory, the word, but basically things like property, to tokenize them properly, you need to. So I'm not a lawyer, so I'm just trying to put all the words together. But basically, it's not as simple as just tokenizing an asset and now that token is an IOU to that asset. It needs to go through quite a lot of regulatory words in order to actually be a debt mechanism for that asset. Does that make sense? Kind of butchered that, but the point is that I'm intrigued as to how the regulators and governments will look at things like tokenized assets, because I don't think it's as simple as just putting something on the blockchain and then giving any owner of the token like a claim to that actual asset, if that makes sense. So that's something to consider.
Okay, I'm gonna hopefully not put you on the spot, but since you're the tokenomics expert, how do you see the relationship between NFTs and tokens, especially when we think about like something like JADE that I could now tokenize, or I could say JADE is underpinning an NFT. How do you see like the tokenomics play out for this and the value? Like, could I now trade JADE as a DeFi mechanism with their tokens? I see a lot of confusion.
So what was
How do you see the relationship between tokens and NFTs when they're tied to real world assets? So I could have a token related to JADE, or I could say this NFT is underpinned by like a square of JADE and you need to burn it to release the JADE. Do you see there any difference from a tokenomics perspective?
Yeah, like I suppose on a very layman's term, the difference between an NFT and a normal token is the NFT is not fungible, which means that each NFT is different to all the other ones. So if each token, be it NFT or like a normal token, tangible token, if they all represent a kilo of JADE, which is in terms of like purity and the size, weight, and everything else is kilo, is the same, then you don't necessarily need it to be NFTs. You can just have them as fungible tokens because they're not different in what they give the claim to. So I suppose it just depends on what you want to do as Jade City with the asset. You can have it as an NFT and then you can implement a lot of stuff within that, like gatekeeping and something like that. But you can also do that with tokens. So I suppose the main difference is just whether it's fungible.
Yeah, yeah, you're spot on. So I can use prop now. So if we take this kilogram jade here, this is unique, right? I mean, there's not another block of jade in the world that looks like this. This isn't even a particularly special block. It's not even that green, but it is unique. It's got its own grain in it. So if I was to make a 3D scan of that block and put that block somewhere safe, sort of in a storage where it's under lock and key, I could use that NFT. I could use that NFT as if there's sort of received ownership for that block, and I could trade that, and that's non-fungible, absolutely. There is also the option if I had a massive warehouse, just large blocks, and let's say collectively they weigh, a million kilograms, and I could just say, okay, well, I'm going to issue 1 million fungible tokens against that. You could do that, but they couldn't be redeemable for a specific kilogram each. They would just be essentially backed by that value. Now, if somebody said, I want to redeem it, the only way you can do it that's fair is it's got to be a lucky dip to see which bit they get, because they're not all the same. And we have that built into Jade City. So, yeah, I mean, the points you're saying are spot on.
Yeah, on the tokenomics side of it, and just the value side of it, I think it's key to remember that all of everything that pretty much finance exists is based on market principles, and the ultimate defining market principle is what is another person willing to pay for an item. And I think when you have things on a market backed by real world assets, it starts to get rid of a lot of the problem that we see in the blockchain and crypto space, is that it's very debatable. Is this worth this price? Because it's not backed by anything. Whereas if you've now got something that is backed by that has kind of already got an existing market, and that people around the world go, yeah, you know what, this is the price of this, then even if something, say for example, this jade here was the market value of this amount of jade is normally $500. If all of a sudden the marketplace is selling them at $5 just because they're NFTs and people don't understand that they're actually getting $500 of value, then what you're going to end up getting is a massive supply and demand thing, where people that do understand are just going to rush in and go, right, let me gobble that up. So no matter what, there's more benefits there than there is, I would say, in the kind of crypto space as is, which is based on more speculation than fundamentals. So yeah.
Just to put that into sort of nice cohesive sentence, I suppose, is like, I feel it's just the arbitrage opportunity is a lot more clearer, like, because you have a very tangible intrinsic value to the token or the asset fractionalized that with, whereas in normal crypto projects, for instance, it's just your ability to govern or your ability to save fees and stuff, which it's not as tangible basically on that.
Yeah, I mean, basically, you're not so familiar with jade, but if it was gold, which is in China, gold and jade are considered the same thing, in terms of, value, in terms of value. If somebody said, oh, I've got some gold at, 90% discount, you'd sell your house, to your bank account, you buy all you could, right? Because you just, you buy it and then sell it off at the right price, So that's kind of the concept, right?
Reminds me a bit of when we had the pandemic and suddenly you were paid to hold fuel because all the companies were going a bit crazy. Similar situation. I know a lot of people, or like I know some people who made a lot of money from that.
Yeah, I just wish I would. Yeah, I remember thinking at the time, I wish I was, still owned in mine. I would have built all that storage tanks up. Anyway.
So obviously, the NFT process or the tokenization process of it saves me a lot of hassle because I don't need to store 100 kilo at jade at home or deal with it. But how do you solve the authentication process? How do you know which one of these blocks of jade belongs to my NFT that I hopefully
Oh,
will
it's
tonight?
easy because they're all unique. This panel here is a best. So this is just a sheet of jade that's 1.5 meters thick, and it lights up, so you can see it really clearly. So they're all there's not another sheet of jade like this in the world, and we could make a trillion of these, and they're all going to be totally different because it's just a natural rock that comes out of the ground. So if you were to make an NFT, let's just say of that sheet of jade, you'd literally scan it, or you could. I mean, very basically, you can take a photograph of it and turn that photograph into an NFT, right? So then, if I then had this and I wanted to sell it to Mike, and Mike said, "Well, how do I know that that's real and it's not just a piece of glass that you painted?" I could say, "Well, go to the Jade City archive, NFT number this and this, look it up, and there it is." And it's that simple, It's just a copy of that.
Question. What's the supply of JFI token?
Well, JFI token doesn't exist yet, but it depends how much jade is put into the vault. So it's not a token. It doesn't have a fixed supply, and it gets burnt every time an NFT gets created. But I'll do a whole talk on that after this. So we'll and then I'm sure there'll be lots of questions on that.
Wonderful. I was wondering, so we've talked a bit about how asset-backed NFTs have a little bit less volatility and shows a bit more like a minimum value. And so to explain, other than jade and gold, what assets do you think become tokenized over the future? What do you think is the hottest thing, and what do you really want to see?
Nike trainers.
The one that we're probably going to see this year is the bonds, just because if the UK doesn't fix their guilt problem, then there's going to be a lot of guilty people. Excuse the pun. But yeah, like bonds kind of need to get sorted out because they're just not attractive to newer audiences of investors. And unfortunately, pretty much most governments are backed by bonds. So if nobody wants to buy them, then governments kind of almost collapse. So they kind of need to make them attractive in some shape, way, or form to new investors that aren't kind of already investing or doing it through pensions. So bonds, and then stocks and ETFs. I think we're going to probably see tokenized versions of the S&P 500 and the FTSE because, again, it's not really that attractive. So easy way to make it attractive is turn it into a crypto and let everyone just start investing in it. So I think those are the ones that we're going to see.
But question, if things like stocks and bonds, they're already pretty much tokenized versions of other things like debt or equity. So what would be the point of re-tokenizing the tokens?
Just a bit of manipulation.
Yeah. I forgot. I'm just interested to how can they make things like, so is that a question / answer from the audience?
It makes the stock market tradable 24/7. Like anything will be tradable 24/7 if it's tokenized in crypto on the blockchain. At the minute, markets operate 9 to 5, depending on 9 to 12, depending on the region.
Bad time to be a trader.
No, but if you're the S&P, then why wouldn't you just open it 24/7? Okay, cool, but then but they do work 20% because that's what the price jumps. It's just they're not open to the public 20%.
Yeah, but now you make it open to the public.
So then why would you?
Open to like trading.
So it's open to institutions. And then the price jumps from Friday to
speculation. That's just movement versus being on the blockchain.
I mean, I'm just wondering why they do that rather than just opening up.
With bonds, for example, the process of making a bond, the thing that we saw HSBC went from 30 steps to 300 steps to 10 steps. It went from months to days. It just makes the process more seamless.
Yeah, and I think the really interesting side, especially when we start thinking of stocks and individual stocks more so than ETFs, is the on-chain data. Because if companies start putting real-time data of how much inventory they've got, what their real-time cash flow is, how much sales they've made in that day, it changes everything. Like being able to literally go on the Nike website and being able to see, oh, this is how many traders they've sold, this is how much debt they've got, this is how many stores they've got open right now. That changes. And there's no reason why they couldn't do that right now. That everyone's just stalling because they don't want to do that. But if they realize that they could make more money, they'd probably do it.
Pretty cool. I'm excited for like luxury stuff or racehorses or those kind of stupid things that you can now have like a fraction in it once that comes out. Like I want to put a luxury like brand
Racehorse.
portfolio. Like Chanel prices handbags get more expensive every time we have a recession. Those things are very resilient, but I gotta save up quite long. So maybe owning an NFT or a token might solve that problem. I'd be done with the questions and the panel. I thank you very much for your time. And I would now go over to give the audience a chance to ask questions or to ask questions, especially to the JADE project and JADE City. And otherwise, I will hand the microphone over and you will give us a little explanation about what you guys do and how I can own and win one of these JADE blocks.
I get on with it. I might stand up. I'm better at talking when I'm standing up. That's right. Did I swap close to you, mate? Is that right? Well, that's what you're. No, you can stay. Well, you can do whatever you want. Well, actually, you'll be able to see the screen then. So that we go. Is there a way of changing the slides?
I think it's, yeah, I've got it.
You got it.
Press space.
Oh, you press there. Okay. All right. Can you guys hear me without a microphone?
Yeah.
Everybody at the back, you can hear me. I mean, if you want to listen, maybe you're at the back if you don't. Okay. Okay. All right. So here today, I'm here to talk to you about JADE City. But in order to talk to you about JADE City, I have to also talk to you about JADE Block, which is the company which essentially sits on top of JADE City. Because like any blockchain project with a real asset behind it, the real asset has to be attached to a real company, and the real company has to have a real business. And also today, I'm going to have to talk to you about what JADE is, which I know is a non-crypto related topic, but I've got to put things in context. I've got to give you a little bit of a lesson about mining. And by the time I've done that, then I can actually get your brains around blockchain and NFTs, fungible tokens that we use for this thing. So before we start that, I just want to introduce myself. My name is William. I think you heard that earlier. But I spent years and years in the mining industry. When I was 18 years old, I was actually sent to a country called Tajikistan, which is just north of Afghanistan. Interesting country, particularly in 2000. So it was a while ago. And I was just meant to go. My dad sent me there maybe it was a practical joke or something like that. But I was meant to go there for a few months, then come back, go to university, and I ended up spending 13 years there. And over that period of 13 years, I originally working with a company, built 3 mines, and then went out on my own and built 3 mines. So I spent a long time there, building a lot of mines, living on top of some very tall mountains on the Afghanistan border. And sometimes it was fun, sometimes it was miserable, but I did learn a lot about mining. And so that's the industry that I knew. In 2014, at this point, I actually owned some mines with some other people. By some stroke of good luck, somebody was even stupider than me and decided to actually buy one of our mines. And I managed to escape and get out of Tajikistan. And I came back to the UK and I went into education and built a private school in India, which runs to this day in northern India with 1,000 kids in it. And so I totally changed my life and I never wanted to go back to mining again until 6 months. And then I got into blockchain a couple of years ago into the education side. And my idea was I wanted to find an opportunity, but I wanted to find an opportunity that was real because the technology is so exciting. It's so amazing, particularly NFTs. You know, it's just incredible. But so often, 99% of the kind of projects that you've seen in the past, hopefully not so much in the future, you know, is just some kind of pump and dump, some kind of Ponzi scheme, or just some kind of thing where there's no reason for there to be a token. So I wanted to find an opportunity where I could say, that's a real reason to have a token. That's a real reason for there to be an NFT. That's a real reason to use blockchain technology. It's not just a business that I want to add blockchain onto so that I can promote it and say what we do is make some money and then run off to some other place. Okay, so it took me a while. It actually took me a couple of years after looking at lots and lots of opportunities. And I'm a business builder, and you know, I saw lots of opportunities, and nothing ticked the box until this opportunity came along. Okay, so today I'm going to talk to you about this opportunity, and I hope that once you've heard about it, you're going to feel as excited about it as me. All right, so just to start, I'm just going to tell you what the two companies are and what they do. Okay, you got JADE Vault. JADE Vault is a pretty standard company. It's a UK limited company. It has shares, doesn't have tokens. And what JADE Vault does is it has an agreement with a mining company called JADE Resources to buy 25 million kilograms of jade at a ridiculous discount. I'm talking about the first 5 million is at a 99% discount from standard Burmese prices, and then the rest of it is sort of at a 85% discount. Okay, so that's what JADE Vault has, and because it's got this, it's trying to build the biggest treasury of jade in the world. So imagine like Scrooge McDuck, but with jade. Okay, so that's what we're doing with that, and we want to sit on it and enjoy that, and we're going to sell some of it. So that's part of it. That's JADE Vault. Jade City is the blockchain side of it, and Jade City is one where we want to, because we've got so much jade, and the mining company's got even more jade than that, because it's the biggest jade mine in the world. We want people to adopt essentially the idea of owning jade, tokenized jade, i.e. owning it as NFTs, owning it like sort of 1 token is 1 gram, because we need to make the market bigger. The mine has enough jade in it to supply the entire world. If it had 100% of the market for 6 years, that's how big it is. It's the biggest mine in the world. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so that's the backdrop. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what jade is. So if I was to ask most of you in this crowd, what's jade? I think you'd say, yeah, I think it's a green stone that is really popular in China. And that's pretty accurate, apart from it's not always green. Sometimes it's white, sometimes it's grey. It's also one of the hardest, toughest materials on the planet. So if you take, there's a scale called the Mohs index. So diamond is a 10. It's like the hardest thing there is. Marbles, 3.5. Jade's about an 8. Okay, so it's really, really hard. And it's something that has been valued in China for thousands of years. There's even actually evidence that going back something like 30,000 years in terms of people using it, anvils in smiths. So it's got a big history. Now, also when I say the word jade, it's a general term. So jade can refer to 2 types of things. It can be nephrite jade, which is mined in Canada and mined in China, and actually it's got a longer history. And then jadeite jade, which is what I'm talking about today. So jadeite jade didn't come onto the scene until the 1400s, when the emperor of China got brought some jadeite jade, which came from northern Burma. And he saw it and he said, yep, I like some of this. I want some more of this. And he sent some soldiers over to go and get some, take over that land. They got the crap kicked out of them, and then he decided better to trade. Okay, but anyway, he traded, and it was considered the imperial families, it's like their property, right? Basically, nobody else was really allowed to get in on this. And if somebody who was carving jade, because you've probably seen pictures of beautiful jade carvings, if they dared to sign their name on that carving, that was a beheadable offense. All right, so it's just remained in Chinese culture for years and years and years like this. And nowadays, the online trade of jade alone, just the online bit, and that's not even the big bit, is $34 billion a year. China. It's big. It's the same size as the diamond market. In this country, it's tiny because we don't trade in the same way. Okay, so there we go. Can we go to the next slide? So the next question everybody wants to know, well, how much does it cost, right? Is it like a diamond or is it like a brick? Well, the truth is it can be both. Bad quality jade, I've seen $10 a kilo. And this is an example of the best quality jade. This was a necklace sold in 2014 for $27 million. And as you can see, it's nothing special apart from the fact it just happens to be really, really good quality jade. So you've got different levels of jade. You've got utility jade. So it's a bit like this, i.e. it's not too green, it's quite opaque. It's not that exciting looking, but it's still $50 a kilo probably. You've got commercial jade, which looks a bit like this. It's got a lot more green in it and it's more exciting. And this is worth more in the kind of thousands of dollars a kilo. And then you've got imperial jade, which can be literally anything from 100,000 to millions, depending on the quality. So that's jade. Next slide. Okay, so you've got this wonderful mineral that everybody's very excited about. Now there's a very sad story behind it. Jade, all the jadeite in the world comes from one place, with the exception of a tiny bit from Guatemala and a tiny bit from Siberia. It all comes from northern Myanmar or Burma, depending on what you call it. What's happened up there is the Burmese army, together with some Chinese mining companies, and it's just a 25-kilometer area of land, and they just ripped up like the whole thing. I mean, it's like a sort of, environmental disaster beyond what you can imagine. And then on top of that, you've got about 200,000 slaves. There's this picture. I mean, I call them slaves. They're not actual slaves, but they are paid in heroin, so they keep on coming back to work. So, quasi-slave, possibly. Certainly a bad situation. They're all there, basically searching through the rubble. So in the background there, you can see that vertical wall of sand and pebbles, and that would be a riverbed that they're essentially digging up, and they dig it up, they tip it down the hill, and these poor people basically go around tapping the pebbles with these metal poles, and if it makes the right ping, because jade's high density, that might be a piece of jade, and maybe they're going to, win the lottery, and they're going to become rich. But the reality is most of them are made very, very poor, addicted to heroin, and in a pretty bad state. If that's not bad enough, mining vertical walls in riverbeds, some of these walls are 100 meters high, and not very stable. So every year these walls collapse. Hundreds officially die, and thousands probably do die. Then to add to that, once the jade is mined and found, 80% of it gets smuggled on the black market into China. And sometimes to make it even worse, they even put heroin inside the jade before they do. Okay, so when you guys have heard of, you've all seen blood diamond, you've heard of blood diamonds. Blood diamonds are a relatively small percentage of the market. But they're bad, but they are a small percentage of the total diamond market. In the jadeite market, it's all blood jade, with the exception of 6 tons a year that comes out of Burma, the remaining 35,000 tons, that comes out of Guatemala, the remaining 35,000 tons a year comes out of Burma. So that's the reality. That's where we are. It's, and I, go on YouTube, just Google jade mining in Burma, you'll see videos that will make you cry. It's horrendous. So let's get back to happiness, the money. Okay, so I got out of mining, and I didn't want to go back. And I'll just give you a bit of history about my mining. I mined coal. Sorry for all my sins, but that was my job at one point. And when I mine coal, I get about $100 a ton every time I mine a ton of coal. And I ran mines like that, and I worked on those economics. I mined gold. Every time I mined a ton of gold ore, I get about 2 grams of gold, 2 parts per million, worth about $100. So I built my whole mining career on $100 a ton. And then when I was brought this opportunity, this mine in Kazakhstan, every ton that I mined, or we can mine, is worth about $50,000. That's how different it was. That was enough for me to break all the promises I'd ever made to myself that I never wanted to go back to mining. But for this, I had to make a special thing, a special exception. So what we've got, our partner, and I'm specifically talking about our partner, is they've got a jade mine in Kazakhstan, which is a country that I know very well because I lived in that area of the world for years and years. And unlike the Burmese mines where it's riverbeds and it's pebbles, the reason the pebbles are pebbles is because millions of years ago they were solid big bits of rock in a mountain, and maybe a glacier broke it all up and washed it into the river, and a pebble was made, right? I mean, pebbles are not born pebbles, right? They get made into pebbles through erosion and corrosion. What happened in this one in Kazakhstan is the glacier never came along. It never got broken up. It's in one big piece. That piece of rock with those 2 guys standing in the middle of it, that's a piece of jade. That's the biggest piece of jade in the world. And that bit that you're looking at, if you look on this diagram, this cross section beneath, that's just a little bit sticking out the top. So it's a bit like when you see an iceberg, and you're like, oh wow, that's really big. And everybody goes, when you're a kid, and they say, well, what big bits under the water? You're like, oh, really? This is really it. We basically have an iceberg of jade that weighs 200 million kilograms. That's what the mining company is. It is incredible. So because it's big and because it's sticking out of the ground, and it's not sticking out of the ground by accident, it was actually 12.5 million tons of waste was removed 25 years ago or 30 years ago in the Soviet Union. So it was exposed.
And it's just sitting there. So to mine this thing, and we're just talking about a sort of from a environmental point of view, not using much energy, not creating much pollution. All we're really doing is taking a saw and cutting up a big piece of rock that's sticking out of the ground in the middle of the desert. That's kind of it. We have a very, very small team of people who do this. They pay pretty well. It's just, just like a kind of quarry, I guess, in the UK, something like that. That's kind of what it is. All right, we can go. So because we've got this under control, because we're not Burmese smugglers, because we're not paying our workers in heroin, basically we can mine the rock. We know where it all comes from. We can track it all. We can take it for cutting, and we can make products that are essentially ethically sourced, and we can start to provide those for the market. Get the next slide. So I'm just going to sum up like what we've got as JADE Vault, what the contract is that we've got. We've got a contract to buy 25 million kilograms of jade off this mining company. The equivalent quality of jade, the average quality of jade we can get, if you were to buy that in Burma, this is from government data, it'd be about $652 a kilogram. The first 5 million kilograms that we're getting, we're buying at $7 a kilogram. It doesn't take a mathematician to work out. That's a little more than, that's a little bit worse than a 99%. The next 20 million kilograms we're buying at, sorry, the status says 15, it should be 20. The next 20 million kilograms is at $30 a kilogram. Also extremely cheap. So that's what we've got. Okay, that's what the company has got. That's the foundation upon something like Jade City can be built, which is the foundation is essentially potentially an amazing business. Next slide, please. So you've heard all of that. So your next question to me should be, well, that's not brilliant. Why the hell would you build Jade City? Why don't you just do that? And that would be a very good question. Why would you build Jade City? Why would you get into blockchain? Why would you need blockchain? Why would you need all these things? Well, there is an issue here. There's two issues actually. But I'll go to the first one, the most obvious one first. If you take all of that jade that the mining company's got, which is 200 million kilos, and then you've got the 25 million kilos that we've got, that's 225 million kilos. The world market is 35 million kilos a year. Now, nobody's ever going to get 100% of the world market. Be lucky if you got 5% of the world market. So it would take decades, if not a century, to essentially sell all of that. It just can't be done, right? That's just reality, right? I mean, you could try and sell it, you could kill the market or something like that. So it can't be done. So in order to maximize the mine, in order to get the most jade out, and in order to sell the most jade, we actually need to change the market. And one thing that jade does suffer from is transparency and the fact that it's really difficult to buy a piece of jade. Because if you buy, if you go to a market in Hong Kong, as I did, I worked in Hong Kong for a bit, and you bought a piece of jade, it wouldn't look like this, but a small piece, and it's green, and it looks glassy and transparent, and it costs $20 or $50. The reason it costs $20, $50 is because it's not jade. It'd be some other stone, or maybe it's some really bad jade, and they've dipped it in acid to make it look translucent, and they've put some green dye on it to make it look green, and they've done all the things to make it look like expensive jade, but essentially it's fake. It's a very difficult thing to buy. If you want to buy lots of jade, it's and have it as an investment product. So the FT did an article about how Chinese investors are moving out of property and moving into jade in a big way, as a store of value, like we might use gold as a store of value here. It's a difficult thing to do because it's heavy. You don't know if you got the right stuff. You don't know how to store it. How do you do the security? How do you verify it? It's a nightmare. So we thought, by creating a system whereby we could tokenize jadeite, and we could have it so people that own these NFTs, we could actually onboard a lot of people. And if we could really get that to go essentially viral, we could expand the market, and that would actually allow us to sell a lot more jade than we could sell otherwise. So that's the reason for Jade City. The other reason is a slightly less important reason, but what is still important is if you ask the average person to buy some jade and you say it doesn't come from Burma, they'll say it's probably not jade, right? So the Kazakh jadeite needs a bit of a marketing boost, and sometimes there's no better place to do some marketing than in the crypto world. So So you can say, okay, that's a nice idea, getting people to own tokenized JADE, getting them to all those NFTs. But ultimately, you've got to onboard people to do that, right? People generally aren't just going to change their ways, and they're not just going to do it. So we've come up with a plan. We've come up with a way that we think we can get people to do it. And the way we're going to get people to do it, we're going to pay them to do it, quite simply. And the way we're going to pay them to do it is we're going to let them take part in the value chain. We're going to let them put their money towards the mining of JADE and earn interest. So essentially, they're going to be able to lend money onto the platform in stable coins, so they're not taking the risk of some volatile underlying assets, so USDC, for example, and earn 20, 25, 30% interest on that, but earn it in tokenized JADE. Now, by doing that, yeah, it's costing us some JADE, but to be honest, we got a lot of JADE, so that's not really a problem, okay? What might be worth $100 to them only costs us $10. So yes, they think, oh, I'm getting 20%, but it's costing us 2, right? That's the kind of situation that's what we can do. That's what you can do. When you've got the biggest pile of JADE in the world, there's a lot you can do with it, right? And if you can use the blockchain to make that happen, that's great. So what I'm going to attempt now, and I think it's the next slide, is to explain to you how this works, okay? Now this diagram, I apologize for the fact that it looks really complicated, a bit like spaghetti junction, but I'm going to explain it to you, and I promise you, it's not that difficult. But if you can't see it, come closer. But this, hopefully, you'll find is like a really innovative way that we can use NFTs and blockchain sustainably and obviously to make money. So on this diagram, along the top, and sorry, the colors aren't that clear, you've got the blue blocks, okay? And that is the mining company. The mining company doesn't belong to us, that's an independent company. In the middle, you've got JADE Vault, and you've got the shareholders of JADE Vault. So when we raise money, when we get people to invest in our company, they invest in JADE Vault. That's the investment level. And then beneath it, you've got JADE City. This is the blockchain level. This is where people can lend their money, do all these things. So the story starts at JADE City, okay? Imagine you're there, you've got your Metamask wallet. You can come into JADE City, and you can come into JADE City, and you'll be given the option that in the green bank in JADE City that you can lend your funds. You can lock them up. I'm just going to use 12 months as an example. These numbers are all examples, they're not exact. We're still building it, but essentially you can come in and you lend, let's say, $3,000 into JADE City. That $3,000 is then given by JADE City and put into JADE Vault. Now, for the lender, obviously it's risky just to lend $3,000 into a platform. You probably want some collateral. Well, guess what JADE Vault's got? It's got a pool of JADE at this point worth about $600 million. So it can allocate some of the JADE, probably double that value, $6,000 of it, against the $3,000, so that if something was to go wrong, if the $3,000 was lost, some JADE could be sold off to repay the lender. So that's step one. That's where it starts. The $3,000 then goes up to JADE Resources. Now this is at stage 2. We've already bought all our cheap JADE off them. We're now paying $30 a kilogram. JADE Resources gets the $3,000 from JADE Vault, and JADE Resources mines and delivers 100 kilograms. The 100 kilograms of JADE is delivered to JADE Vault. Now, one thing I didn't mention, if you get a raw stone of JADE, you've actually got to cut it and turn it to blocks. You lose about 25% when you do that. So the 100 kilograms of JADE, it's cut and becomes 75 kilograms of blocks. Now the question is what do we do with the 75 kilograms of blocks? Well, 25% of them go into that treasury pool. So we've got that pool of JADE, Scrooge McDuck's pile, that's getting built up. That gets added to every time that happens. So that's where 25% of JADE goes. Then it's the second pool. This is JADE that needs to be sold. Okay, we need to sell the JADE for 2 reasons. One, we've got to pay back the lender because they lent $3,000. We've got to give them their money back. So some of the JADE is sold to do that. The rest of the JADE is sold because you've got to pay the operating costs of the company. Can I just finish this and then do question? Is that right? The rest of it is sold to cover the operating costs of the company and also to pay a cash dividend to shareholders. Assuming this pool is about $75 million, tax dividend will be about $5 a year per share. So that's pool number 2. Pool number 3 is the reward pool. And this is where the onboarding starts of the lender. Okay, this is where we onboard them into the blockchain side, into the tokenized data side of things. So this lender's lent $3,000. Now here we're assuming a 25% ROI. So 25% of $3,000 is $750. So we owe that lender $750 per JADE. Using the worst quality JADE, because remember our JADE can vary. So let's say between 1 and 10, the worst quality being 1 and the best quality being 10. Assuming it's a block of JADE, the worst quality, we'll say it's worth $70 a kilogram. Therefore, to give him $750 worth of the worst quality, we need to give him 10.7 kilograms. I apologize, the numbers not rounded numbers, but math does do that. So 10.7 kilograms. Just imagine one block, like this block, goes into that pool. And this block is then scanned and turned into an NFT. Okay, so the block is put in stores and the NFT is put in stores. Now, a 10.7 kilogram block weighs 10,700 grams. With 10,700 grams now in stores, we can actually issue a utility token. One token is 1 gram. So we issued 10,700 JFI tokens. Those 10,700 JFI tokens, now they're backed by JADE, can be issued as the reward. So we just issued the equivalent of $750 worth of JADE for the lender. So the lender's now got the 10,700 JFI tokens. Now the JFI token can be volatile, just like any cryptocurrency. It can go down 90%, it can go up 100%. We know what cryptos are like. And yes, so in dollar terms, it might not be $750 when you trade the token on the market, but it will always be redeemable because this is sunk cost. It will always be redeemable. Even if it goes down 99%, it can always be traded in. One token is 1 gram. So yes, the lender, they might sell the token on the DEX, they might keep it in their wallet, they might do what they want. But let's just assume, for the sake of this story, that they want to turn those tokens into JADE. All they need to do is they go to what we call the mine in Jade City. They burn the tokens and they mint a block. So they burn 10,700 tokens, let's say. They mint a block worth that's 10,700 grams, 10.7 kilograms. The thing is, though, remember I said there's all kinds of different blocks in there. There's not just one block in there, there's 100 blocks in there. Some of them are 1 out of 10 quality, some of them are 10 out of 10 quality. So if they are unlucky and they get a 1 out of 10, they got $750 worth of JADE. But if they're really lucky, maybe they get a 5 out of 10. Maybe they got $3,000 worth of JADE. So we call it the JADE arcade. Essentially, it's a lucky dip, which is what I mentioned earlier. That's the way you can go from fungible to non-fungible and make it fair. In China, gambling is very popular. In China, JADE is very popular. You mix those two together, you might just create something very popular. Who knows? So anyway, at this point, let's say the lender, they've got their block, it's a 5 out of 10, it's worth a couple of $1,000, they're happy. They can trade it as an NFT. It's an NFT. There will be an NFT trading platform in Jade City called the Grand Bazaar where they can trade the NFTs. They can keep it in their wallet and they can just hold it as an investment. And the physical block will stay in storage in Dubai, where our stores will be. Or should they actually physically need the block, maybe it's a 500 kilogram block and they've got a factory and they make stuff out of jade. All they do is they go to the Jade Road, as it's called, in Jade City. They burn their NFT. They pay the delivery charge, depending on what country and how they want it sent. The NFT is burnt, and the physical block is delivered to their factory or their house, or wherever they want it. And that is pretty much how it works. So if anybody's confused on that diagram, now they can ask the question before I go on. Yeah. You can't find a buyer for jade. Well, it's a $100 billion market. So there should be a buyer. I mean, yes, possibly you couldn't find a buyer, but it's a huge market. I mean, it's not, I mean, it'd be like saying, you know, not finding a buyer for oil or not finding a buyer not finding a buyer for a diamond or something like that. You can sell a diamond, you might have to sell it cheap if the market's bad, but you can sell it. There's a lot of demand. Is that okay answer, or you want to ask something else? The loans are on chain, yes. If you can't sell it, well, if something goes wrong, yes, you've got the JADE from the pool here. So when they make the loan in the first place, they're obviously taking a risk, right? It doesn't go without any risk. So the security that we put up. So the idea is if they were to put up, just say $1,000, right? Is that we will provide $2,000 of JADE from this pool of security. That's like the backstop. And yes, if something goes wrong, they get $2,000 JADE from that pool. I mean, I don't think you can do better than that, right? But that's, you know, when any of us make a risk or lend into a pool, we take risks. I would consider, you know, being given $2,000 of hard assets is less risky than 99.9% on planet Earth today. But is that right? Cool. Any other questions on the diagram? Anybody totally confused and thinks I'm mad? Okay, we're good. All right, let's see the next slide then. Okay, so Jade City, that's just, I guess what in that diagram, that's kind of like the essence of Jade City. That's what Jade City does. Essentially, it is a tool which we're trying to use to onboard people to do that so we can grow our market. And it's going to cost us Jade. How much Jade is it going to cost us? Well, our offtake agreement allows us to run that lending pool at a volume of $75 million a year being lent in for a period of 8 years. That's the lifespan that it's got. So it's not forever, but in crypto land, 8 years is quite long. And you never know, we might get an even bigger offtake from the mine once they see how it works and they, you know, use it. So that's what it is. Now, but it costs us because we've got to give away quite a lot of Jade each year. You know, it'd be quite nice if we just use our own money, not borrow any money, and not pay people 25% interest. How much is the value? Well, we're giving away over a period of 8 years about $150 million worth of Jade to make that happen. That's just to put a number on it. That's the quantum that we're talking about. So I think it's like $18 million a year. So let's go on to the next slide. I think you guys get the point of Jade City. So Jade City, in Jade City, it will have all kinds of things. And it will be, the idea is a sort of metaverse concept where you've got the Imperial Palace in the middle. That's where all the kind of the rules of the Jade City, the governance of Jade City. Jade City will have its own governance token. Jade City in its own right, because all the diagram there you saw was Jade Vault making money. Jade City will also make a lot of money. For every kilogram that goes through Jade City, that gets bought through Jade City will earn $3, for example. So with a $75 million pool, $30 a kilo, that's $7.5 million of revenue just from that one thing there. It will have its own DEX, it will have its own NFT trading platform, it will have its own online shop, it will have where you can not only take part in the value chain of the mining, but you can also take part in the value chain of the processing, which is an even bigger business in its own right. So Jade City will be its own economy. So in Jade City, with its economy, it will make profits. The profits of Jade City will be distributed 50% going to the governance token holders, and the other 50% will go to the citizens of Jade City. Not all the citizens, just the ones at the top of the ladder. But every citizen of Jade City will have benefits and things that it will gain from being in Jade City. We go to the next slide. I'm going to talk about these citizens. Okay, so in Jade City, being a mystical city, it's going to have a mystical tribe. This is the tribe of the Jadeites. And you wonder, well, why do we have to have citizens in Jade City? Well, one of the reasons we want to have citizens in Jade City is because we think it's really cool. But the other and the more important reason in Jade City is, if you remember, I said the staking pool, the idea is to make it $75 million. Why not $1 billion? Well, maybe we would get $1 billion. If it was $1 billion, the game would be over in a year and we'd run out of Jade. So we can't do that. But then if it's too small, it's not interesting enough, right? So we came to the conclusion 75 million is right. But in that 75 million pool, we don't just want one person going $75 million, because then the sum of all our efforts will be that we've onboarded one person, $75 billion, we'll be paying them $18 million a year. What we want is we want thousands of people to come on board. And we want some people to lend $500 and some people to lend $5,000. We want a community to come on board. So our idea is that if you want to lend into the platform, you need to be citizen of Jade City. So we are going to have a citizenship sale near the end of this year for the JADEs, and we've got 10,000 of them going. 1,000 of them have been issued to the Jade Vault shareholders and community members, and we're giving away. If you scan that thing up on the wall tonight, as there aren't very many of you here, you've got a pretty good chance of winning one, so I'd recommend it. All you have to do is follow us on Twitter, so it's pretty easy, and share some stuff. So these are the JADEs. Now what I'm going to do is explain to you a bit about how they work. So if we go to the next slide. Okay, so in the JADEs, you've got a hierarchy, a bit like the UK, I guess. You've got the royal family and the imperial guard at the top, and there's 100 of those. And then if you go right down to the very bottom, you've got the miners at the bottom, and there's 4,200 of those. There will be a random mint, and you will get randomly one of those. If you get a royal family, it's pretty good, and if you get a miner, it's still pretty good, but it's not going to include any royal family. You can't see it very well here, but just for example, Jade City's profits, which will be hopefully in the tens of millions of dollars a year, will be shared out. So 15% of the city's profits will get shared out between the 100 members of the royal family and the imperial guard. 15%, the next 15% will be shared out for 50 dragons, and so on. If you got a keepers of stone, you get the rest. If you're a master jeweler, you don't get part of the profits, but you do get other things. We go to the next slide. I'll come on to what the benefits are for everybody. One other very interesting thing about a Jadeite citizen is that each Jadeite citizen has a heartstone, because they're all powered by Jade in this mythical world. When you have your Jadeite citizen, you don't actually see the heartstone. You don't know what the heartstone looks like. If your citizen is a dragon, all you know is they have a very big heartstone. If they're a member of the royal family, you know the heartstone is quite good quality. And if they're a miner, it might not be so good. But regardless of that, the idea is that each heartstone backing each NFT will be worth about $500, and that's what we plan the minting price to be. So when you buy your citizen, worst case scenario, there's a bit of jade underneath it. There is, however, one catch. You can't see the heartstone while your character is alive. Should you choose that you want to see your heartstone, the only way you can do it is you have to kill your character. You have to burn your NFT. So you are always stuck with this dilemma that you might want. If you're not happy with your character, you can kill it, you can sell it, you can use it. If you kill your character and burn it, the heartstone will be revealed in the form of an NFT, which will be a scan of the heartstone. If you actually want to wear your heartstone around your neck, you can burn your heartstone NFT, pay the delivery charge, it'll be delivered to your house, and you can walk around all day with your heartstone around your neck. That's the way it'll work. Coming back to the benefits and how it works in the staking pool, this is the final slide, so thanks for bearing with me. And we're just going to go to the staking pool over here because that's what we talked about. This is just how it would work. So let's say you're a member of the royal family, you get share of the profits and things like that. But in the staking pool, you'd be able to stake $18,000. That would be your cap, and you earn 30% tokenized jade on that. So that is at the top end of the market. If you're a master jeweler in the middle, for example, you can stake $5,000 and get 24%. So it's not quite as good. And if you're a miner, you can stake $1,000 and get 18%. So it's less. So there's a good reason if you're in the mood for earning tokenized jade, it's a good reason to get a character that's high up the ladder. In addition to the staking pool, there's something called pay to play, which I'm not going to go into, but essentially it's the same concept. So those numbers I've just said, you can double them because you can earn tokenized jade from the pay to play pool as well. Next slide, please. That's it. All right, guys. So if anybody wants to ask any questions or chat to me later or anything like that. Yes, Mike.
Why are they capped?
Why are they capped?
Yeah.
They're capped because the pool, we need to cap the pool at 75 million. So if you take all the citizens And all these other citizens, all the dices, or these dodgy guys are coming to do gambling. You take all their limits, and you add them all together. It's basically 75. And we assume that obviously not everybody's going to use their total cap, which brings it down. So we assume a 60% utilization, and that puts us at about where we need to be. Anything else? Any questions? No? Fine. Cool. Oh yeah. We're debating this inside the company. I mean, yeah, you could put more than one NFT in a wallet, but can you actually plug it in and use it? I think the answer is probably yes. You will be able to do it with multiple ones. Ideally, we want people to, have one each. We want as many. We want a huge community, not a small community. But and lots of things in the city. Whether you want to go shopping in the city, if you want to play on the games in the city, if you want to use the services, buy blocks of JADE, get them shipped. You don't need to be a citizen to do all of that. The citizenship basically gets you access to staking pools, the reward pools, and it gets you discounts. So if you had a block of JADE like this, hang on, quick example. So this is a JADE bracelet right here, and this is a block of JADE. You would never process one this small, but just an example. So let's say you own this as an NFT, but just imagine it's much bigger than this. You will have the option in the JADE Smith to say, I want to convert this into jewelry, right? And we'll have set formats, right? So I want to convert my 500 kilogram block, into 1,000 pendants and 500 bracelets, and that service will be available, right? So it's really, a lot of JADE City is really designed for businesses. If you're a seller on Etsy or Amazon or something like that, it's pretty useful. You can just buy a block and just have it processed. It's real. It's just cost you half. You don't have to worry about it being ethically sourced, and there's no stress, right? So that's something right. Now that service, if you're a citizen, if you're a JADE Smith, now JADE Smith is pretty low down the ladder, that service is like much cheaper and you get a much better service. So there's a reason for a business to own a JADE Smith. And if you're a miner, if you go into the block pool where you mint random blocks and you've got, 20% chance of getting a 1 out of 10 and a 20% chance of getting a 2 out of 10. If you're a miner, you're going to a pool, there will be no 1 out of 10. There will only be 2 out of 10 pluses, right? So if you're in the business of buying blocks, owning a miner NFT is better than owning royal family. So everything is designed depending on how you use this platform as to what NFT you might want to own. And it's largely a lot of it's designed for businesses.
So when you said the 1 out of 2, are you referring to the quality of
the quality of the block? Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Any others? You're good? All right. In that case, thank you very much, guys, for listening. I hope it wasn't too long. And yeah, I'm just around. So you can ask me any questions.